The night opens like a movie that doesn't give the audience time to blink. A line of black glass luxury cars glides past the gates, their engines humming like a quiet warning to anyone who doesn't belong. Flashing cameras pop in the cold air. Laughter spills from the front steps of the Harrow mansion, loud, rich, careless. But inside, far from the polished marble floors and gold-trimmed columns, Ava stands alone in a narrow hallway, facing a small mirror that shakes every time someone walks by. She smooths the soft emerald fabric of her dress, fingertips tracing each seam she stitched herself after long nights, after long babysitting shifts, after telling herself that one day she would design clothes for people who treated others with kindness. The dress isn't perfect. The neckline dips a little too far on one side. A thread near her waist curves instead of lying straight. But it is hers, her creation, her pride, and for a brief moment she lets herself smile. Then the sound hits, heels tapping with authority, like someone carving their name into the floor. Lydia Harrow appears at the top of the staircase, floating in diamonds that flash like ice. Her gown looks like it was poured from silver light. Her posture is the kind that makes people move out of the way without her asking. Guests stop and lift their heads, admiring her with the same awe they give to priceless paintings. Lydia pauses, hand on the banister, scanning the room with a gaze that sees and judges everything. Then her eyes land on Ava. They don't move, they don't blink. They just stare with a kind of cold interest that makes Ava's stomach twist. A beat of silence falls, heavy, sharp. Every conversation near the staircase slows long enough to catch whatever is about to happen. Lydia descends with slow, deliberate steps until she stands just a few feet from Ava. Her lips curl upward into a smirk that could cut glass. "Is that what you're wearing?" she says, her voice smooth but loud enough to slice through the air. Heads turn, eyebrows rise, and then it comes, the laughter. First soft chuckles, then louder snickers, building into something cruel and bright. The sound hits Ava like a slap. Her cheeks burn, her throat tightens. She grips her small clutch with both hands, trying to keep them from trembling. Lydia makes a show of it, lifting the front corner of Ava's dress between two fingers, as if she were touching something found on a clearance rack thrown in the wrong section. "How quaint," she murmurs, letting the fabric fall like it offended her. Another round of laughter rolls through the crowd. Ava stands frozen, the humiliation spreading across her skin like fire. She feels every whisper, every stare. She feels the walls closing in. She feels her pulse rising in her ears, drowning out the music coming from the ballroom. Someone whispers, "Did she make that herself?" Someone else snorts, "Looks like it." Ava tries to swallow the lump forming in her throat, but the air feels thick, heavy, impossible to breathe. She bows her head slightly, her voice small but steady. "Excuse me, I should check on the baby." She walks away quickly, each step stiff, her eyes stinging. She turns the corner before the tears can fall. In the quiet of the hallway, she presses her hand over her chest, trying to slow the pounding. She isn't supposed to be seen. She isn't supposed to stand out. She is the babysitter, the help. And nights like this remind her of exactly where people like Lydia think she belongs. Ava pushes open the door to the nursery and steps inside. The lights glow soft and warm. Toys rest in neat little bins. A tiny mobile spins lazily above the crib. The baby, Emma, sleeps peacefully, unaware of the world outside this room. Ava exhales shakily, sinking into the rocking chair beside the crib. Here she can breathe again. Here she can exist without fear of judgment. She wipes her cheeks gently with the back of her hand, careful not to wake the child. She thinks about her mother's voice telling her to hold her head high. She thinks about the nights she stayed up sewing, imagining a world where people respected her talent instead of mocking it. She thinks about the humiliation burning fresh beneath her skin, and she wonders if she will ever escape moments like these. The laughter still echoes in her memory, sharp enough to make her flinch. But as she sits in the quiet room, she notices something else, something softer. She looks down at her dress again, running her hand over the fabric. The emerald still glows in the dim nursery light. The stitching, though imperfect, tells a story of work, patience, and hope. Ava breathes in slowly, letting the hurt settle but not break her. She doesn't know it yet, but she is sitting in the center of a turning point, a moment that will one day replay in interviews, documentaries, and red carpets when people ask how her journey started. She won't know until much later that this exact dress, this handmade creation, will soon catch the eye of someone powerful, someone who sees beauty where others see flaws, someone who will change her life. But for now, she only knows the smallness in her chest and the warmth of the nursery. The music downstairs grows louder, voices rise and fall. Lydia's laugh floats through the hallway like a stain carried by the air. Ava closes her eyes, resting her forehead against the back of her hand. She wants to disappear. She wants the night to end. And yet, stars shift quietly outside the window. History rearranges itself in silence. Change begins without warning. Threads of fate tug in directions no one expects. Because while Lydia is downstairs mocking her, while guests whisper and sneer, while Ava hides in the nursery trying to gather herself, a future editor of Vogue is already inside that gala, already stepping out of her car, already walking through the doors with a sharp eye for the kind of beauty the world doesn't always recognize at first glance. Ava doesn't know it, Lydia doesn't know it, no one in that house knows it. But this dress, the same dress they laughed at, will soon appear on the cover of Vogue, and the very people who mocked her tonight will one day kneel at her talent. The night isn't done with Ava Harrow, not even close, and the world is about to learn that dignity, once challenged, has a way of rising higher than anyone expects. The morning light creeps through the tall windows of the Harrow mansion, hitting the polished floors and reflecting off the gold-trimmed banisters in sharp, bright lines. But the warmth of the sun doesn't reach Ava. She steps carefully over the marble, her hands steady, her face calm, pretending that the night before was nothing more than a shadow she can brush off. The quiet tension of the house presses against her like a weight she can't quite lift. Lydia moves through the rooms with the effortless grace of someone who owns not just the mansion, but the entire world inside it. Her words are clipped, her gestures sharp, her voice low and commanding. Ava, move the napkins. No, not that way. Straighten them. And don't forget the silver. She passes Ava without so much as a glance, as though she doesn't exist. The ghost of last night's humiliation coils around Ava's chest, but she forces herself to stand tall, to move through the house like a shadow that can't be crushed, because she has no choice. She needs the money. She needs the roof over her head, the food in her fridge. Survival tastes bitter, but it keeps her moving. By mid-morning, the house is buzzing with a new kind of performance. Lydia's friends arrive for brunch, their laughter spilling through the grand dining room, delicate and sharp, like the clinking of crystal. The women are impeccably dressed, adorned with pearls and pastel silks, the kind of elegance that's both intimidating and suffocating. Lydia, standing at the head of the table, leans back in her chair and begins to retell the dress joke. Every word is deliberate, every pause measured to ensure maximum effect. She gestures with a manicured hand, her voice lilting and cruel. Ava's emerald dress, her small clutch, the way she stood frozen, everything becomes a performance for the amusement of the wealthy. Champagne glasses lift and tilt. Laughter, soft at first, then louder, cuts through the room. Ava feels the air tighten in her lungs. Her heartbeat thunders behind her ribs like a warning drum. The words sting, echoing in her mind, yet she holds herself steady. She focuses on the toddler in her care, on the little curls of hair brushing the crib, on the soft, rhythmic breathing of a child who loves her without judgment. She hums quietly, low and steady, letting the melody anchor her. Hands that tremble just beneath the surface remain steady. A warm smile plays across her lips, not for the adults who sneer, but for the tiny soul who looks up at her with trust. This is her sanctuary, the place where her dignity can survive intact. Hours stretch into afternoon. The house has quieted. The toddler naps, and the golden light slants across the floor, falling on Ava as she sits cross-legged with her sketchbook open on her lap. Pencil lines move softly across the page, curves, folds, seams, drapes, designs that seem too daring, too elegant, too alive for a nanny's notebook. Each stroke carries her dreams, each line a rebellion against the life she is forced to live. She loses herself in the creation, the rhythm of her pencil, a quiet heartbeat in the otherwise silent house. Every sheet of paper is a small act of defiance, a reminder that who she is cannot be diminished by laughter or sneers. Then the sound comes, the unmistakable click of heels approaching, the voice dripping with disbelief. "What are you doing?" Lydia's words land like stones thrown across the room. Ava's hand freezes, pencil hovering midair. She looks up, calm, collected, and closes the sketchbook gently, folding it into her lap. "Just a hobby," she says softly. Her tone is quiet, but underneath is a strength Lydia cannot reach. Lydia rolls her eyes, a gesture of disdain, a practiced move that has silenced many before. "Right," she says, voice sharp as broken glass. "Leave fashion to the people who understand it." She tilts her head, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Not everyone can play in the big leagues, sweetie. Stick to what you know." The words cut, slicing across the invisible thread of pride Ava holds onto, but they do not break her. Ava breathes in slowly, the faint scent of baby powder and sunlight grounding her. She sits tall, meeting Lydia's gaze without fear, without apology. Her lips curve, almost imperceptibly, because she understands something Lydia does not. Cruelty cannot define her. It can't touch the fire burning quietly inside. Every dismissive laugh, every roll of the eyes, every sharp word is simply another thread in the story of her rise, another proof that she is still standing, still creating, still dreaming. Her hands, steady now, return to the pencil, tracing lines that belong not just to paper, but to the world she has not yet claimed. Far away in a cramped studio across town, someone else is preparing for what is about to happen. Ava's best friend, an up-and-coming photographer with a keen eye and an unshakable belief in her friend's talent, arranges lights, adjusts backdrops, and spreads fabrics across a worn table. She runs her fingers over sketches and swatches, the colors and shapes sparking possibilities. Every click of the camera, every adjustment of focus, is a small whisper to the universe. Ava's time is coming. She doesn't know it yet, but the seeds of recognition are planted, ready to grow in the soil of someone else's support, someone else's vision. Across the city, lives are aligning in a way that Lydia could never anticipate, in a way that Ava herself has not dared to imagine. Back in the mansion, Ava folds her sketchbook carefully, placing it in her bag. She hums again, soft and low, keeping her composure as the toddler stirs in her sleep. Lydia moves through the room like she owns it, touching nothing, observing everything, unaware of the quiet revolution taking place just a few feet away. Ava's dreams, sketched in pencil and shaded in hope, are already defying the walls that confine her. She adjusts the child's blanket with gentle precision, her movements deliberate enough to remind herself that no one, not even Lydia, can strip away the dignity she carries in her chest. Every laugh Lydia made that morning, every sneer, every dismissive glance, becomes a challenge Ava meets with silent resilience. Each act of cruelty, instead of crushing her, is absorbed into something stronger: patience, vision, and the quiet understanding that the world she imagines is bigger than the one Lydia enforces. One day, she will walk into rooms where her talent speaks louder than wealth, where her name is celebrated, where her work demands attention. And when that day comes, those who laughed and mocked will have no power to dim her light. The afternoon sun stretches its golden fingers across the floor, illuminating Ava as she rises, carrying the child in her arms. She moves through the rooms with measured grace, her back straight, her eyes forward. Every step is a promise to herself, that the laughter will not linger in her memory beyond the lessons it taught her, that her skill, her creativity, her resilience will one day be the only sound that matters. And far away, in that small studio buzzing with energy, her best friend captures the first images that will set the world on fire. Images that show Ava not as the help, not as the shadow, not as the one laughed at, but as the artist she was always meant to be. In the quiet of the mansion, in the lingering echo of brunkroom laughter, Ava walks with a calm determination, her sketchbook heavy with possibilities, her heart light with unspoken dreams. Lydia, oblivious to the storm she has stirred, continues to move through her gilded halls, unaware that her power is fragile, that her cruelty is temporary, that the girl she mocked is quietly, relentlessly preparing to rise. And the world beyond those walls is already waiting. The city grumbles under a grey sky, and the rain falls in heavy sheets that hammer against the streets and splash against windshields. 2 weeks have passed since the Brunkroom humiliation, since the sharp laughter and sneers that tried to shrink Ava into nothing. And now, the storm follows her up the long driveway, rattling the gates, as if the weather itself knows that something is about to change. Ava steps from her soaked umbrella into the Harrow mansion, droplets tracing the seams of her coat, wet strands of hair clinging to her forehead. The wind whips through the halls behind her, as if carrying whispers of the world outside, whispers that she isn't meant to hear, yet she does. Her boots click softly on the marble floor as she moves toward the nursery, where the child waits, oblivious to the storm outside. Ava's hands are careful, gentle, lifting the small body into her arms, brushing damp curls from the child's face. She hums a soft tune, a song she learned long ago, letting the rhythm calm her own pulse. Her heart is full of quiet determination. She does not yet know, but her life is poised to pivot on a single, fragile moment. The phone vibrates in her pocket. A buzz, then another, unknown number. Another. Ava glances down, frowning, and shakes her head. She ignores it. Some things are not urgent. Some calls can wait. Lydia sits across the room, perched on a chaise in her diamond-studded dress, watching Ava with one arched brow, eyes sharp, calculating like a hawk. There is judgment in that gaze, a subtle accusation that Ava doesn't belong, that she is too small, too insignificant to be noticed by the world outside these walls. Ava's hands continue their work, brushing the child's hair, stacking blocks into towers, keeping the moment intact, safe, ordinary. She focuses on the little life that trusts her completely, the warmth that reminds her she is not powerless. But the phone continues. Buzz after buzz, insistent, relentless. Ava sighs and finally steps into the hallway, wet coat dripping onto the polished floor. She presses the phone to her ear, the unknown number making her stomach twist into a tight knot. A breath. She holds it. The child's laughter trails softly from the nursery, a tether to normalcy, to everything that keeps her grounded. Then the voice comes, quiet, steady, impossible. Ava, your dress was selected for the cover. Vogue wants you. The words strike like lightning. Ava freezes, the phone trembling against her ear. Her breath catches. The blood seems to drain from her face, leaving her stunned and raw. Her mind races. Vogue, the emerald dress, the dress that Lydia mocked, lifted carelessly between two fingers like it had no worth. The dress that had been whispered about behind champagne glasses as quaint, amateur, unworthy. The impossible, the unbelievable, the unimaginable is real. It is happening. She presses the phone tighter, listening as the voice explains further. Her friend, that quiet believer who never doubted her talent, had secretly submitted photos of Ava in her handmade dress to a fashion contest judged by Vogue's editorial team. A bold, daring move, one that had seemed almost reckless at the time. And now it had paid off. The dress, her creation, is being called fresh, visionary, a breakthrough in modern design. Words swirl in her mind, heavy and intoxicating, carrying the weight of every late night spent stitching seams, adjusting hems, holding onto dreams while being laughed at, dismissed, and overlooked. Every ounce of humiliation, every sneer, every roll of Lydia's eyes becomes fuel, turns into fire in her chest. Ava can feel her knees weaken. She presses a hand to the wall to steady herself, gripping the edge of the banister as if it will hold her in place while her life spins into a new orbit. She exhales slowly, letting the sound out in shaky waves. The world she had imagined for herself, one step at a time, is no longer a distant hope. It is here, tangible, calling her forward. When she returns to the living room, carrying the news like a fragile flame, Lydia is still there. Her sharp gaze catches Ava immediately, assessing, measuring, trying to detect what has shifted. There is a tilt of the head, a soft frown forming, a smile that falters in midair. "What now? You look emotional," Lydia says, her tone light, but strained. It is the first crack in her armor Ava has ever seen. Ava closes her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply, the scent of rain-soaked earth clinging to her coat. She opens her mouth, letting the words fall softly but deliberately, heavy with truth. Vogue chose my dress. The room freezes. The laughter, the easy arrogance, the air of entitlement that had long defined Lydia's world, all of it stops. The champagne glasses on the table seem to hold their breath. Lydia's smile collapses into something smaller, tighter, controlled. Her hands flex, tightening around the edges of her chair. The balance of power shifts quietly, almost imperceptibly, but unmistakably. The room, once ruled by Lydia's sneers and commands, trembles with a new reality. A reality where the person she tried to humiliate is now visible, recognized, celebrated. Ava stands tall, her heart still racing, her hands still damp from the rain outside, and feels the first sweet taste of vindication. It is not revenge, not anger. It is something steadier, stronger. It is justice delivered without spectacle, without cruelty. The recognition she has longed for, dreamed for, worked for in quiet, lonely hours, arrives in the form of words she once believed unreachable, visionary, breakthrough, selected. Lydia looks at her, a storm behind her eyes, trying to gather herself, trying to reclaim some fragment of control. But Ava doesn't flinch. She meets that gaze calmly, almost serenely, knowing that no amount of money, influence, or jewels can undo what has just begun. She feels the truth settle in her chest. Talent cannot be mocked into nothingness. Dreams cannot be crushed by laughter. The world sees what it is meant to see eventually, and when it does, it bows. Outside, the storm continues to rage, rain splattering against the mansion windows, lightning illuminating the room in brief, brilliant flashes. Each flash mirrors the shock in Lydia's eyes, the sudden awareness that her hierarchy, her judgment, her cruelty, none of it matters in the face of talent, perseverance, and quiet belief. Ava's emerald dress, stitched with care and late-night hands, stands as a symbol of endurance, a symbol of resilience. A symbol that beauty, courage, and vision cannot be contained, cannot be belittled, cannot be erased. The phone buzzes again in Ava's hand, messages of congratulations, of disbelief, of excitement, but she doesn't answer. She holds it loosely, letting the silence carry the weight of what has changed. Lydia remains frozen, her composure rattled, the subtle dominance she has long wielded now undercut by something she cannot understand or control. Ava breathes in the tension, letting it settle in her chest, a quiet affirmation of the shift that has occurred. In the silence, Ava steps back into the nursery, carrying the child gently. The small life in her arms is unaware of the power struggle, the cruelty, the reversal unfolding just beyond the crib. And yet, in this quiet, she feels it, the first, unmistakable taste of triumph. She hums softly again, a tune that no one can steal, a melody threaded with the memory of late nights, of hope, of patience. The storm outside begins to ease, the rain softening to a drizzle, as if even nature recognizes the moment, the quiet turning of fate that has just taken place. The day stretches on, the mansion filled with an unspoken understanding. Ava walks through it differently now, not smaller, not unnoticed. She carries the invisible crown of recognition, the weightless, undeniable authority of talent validated. Lydia watches, her sharp eyes dulling slightly, forced to acknowledge, whether consciously or not, that the hierarchy has changed. That the girl she tried to humiliate is no longer beneath her, but rising above, elevated by a world that sees her worth where Lydia never could. And as Ava closes her eyes for a moment, letting the tiny arms of the child curl around her neck, she understands something she has always known deep inside. Dignity, skill, and perseverance cannot be mocked out of existence. They cannot be diminished by wealth or cruelty. They persist, quietly, stubbornly, until the world finally bends to acknowledge them. And when it does, the balance of power tilts, inevitably, unmistakably, forever. The morning sunlight falls softly on the city streets, catching the edges of newsstands and glass windows, glinting off the bold letters that scream across magazine covers. There she is, Ava, standing tall, poised, proud, wearing the very emerald dress that once drew cruel laughter from Lydia Harrow and her friends. The glossy paper captures her confidence, her quiet strength, her vision transformed from humble handmade stitches into something extraordinary. The cover shouts her arrival, the world finally forced to take notice. Every fold of fabric, every seam, every curve of that dress tells the story of late nights, worn hands, patience, and belief that she deserved to be seen. The city seems to hum around her, the noise of traffic and footsteps blending into a melody of recognition that plays just for her. In bookstores and on street corners, people pause to admire the cover. Some flip through the pages, reading the story behind the creation, marveling at the audacity, the talent, the originality of a dress born from the hands of someone who had been laughed at and dismissed. Interviews pour in. Questions spill over like warm rain. How did you create this? Who inspired you? Where do you get your ideas? Each answer is measured, calm, gracious, but underneath is a quiet fire of vindication. Designers reach out, extending hands that once might have turned away in disbelief. One fashion house offers her a starting position, promising mentorship, collaboration, exposure, a path Ava had only dared to imagine in whispered dreams. The world bends around her, bending toward recognition, acknowledgement, admiration. Every day her life transforms slowly, beautifully, deservedly. The mansion and its hallways of judgment, the laughter, the sneers, the invisible chains of power, none of it matters anymore. Ava walks through the world differently now, her shoulders squared, her eyes calm, knowing that her worth was never in someone else's approval, but in her own courage to create, to persist, to rise above. She touches the fabric of her dress carefully, as if it holds memory, and in it, she feels the echo of every moment she persevered. Meanwhile, far removed from the hum of creativity and celebration, Lydia Harrow moves through her own life under a weight she has never known. Wealth, status, and admiration from her peers no longer shield her from the sting of reality. One afternoon, while idly browsing in a small local store, she freezes. There on the display rack is the Vogue issue that has changed Ava's life. The cover faces her, bold, brilliant, impossible to ignore. The dress born from grace, the caption reads, and it lands in Lydia's chest like a sudden, sharp frost. Around her, people stop to admire, whisper, praise the rising designer. They point, they smile, they snap photos. They marvel at the ingenuity and poise of a young woman who was once invisible to them and once invisible to Lydia. For the first time, something unfamiliar takes root inside her, humility. It is an awkward, uncomfortable thing. She stands frozen, unable to look away, unable to speak, her carefully constructed world of superiority and entitlement crumbling, one compliment at a time. Her fingers brush over the magazine as if to feel some connection to the success she cannot claim, and a strange, bitter taste of shame fills her mouth. She feels smaller, diminished, a reflection of the arrogance she once wielded with ease. The laughter that once echoed in her mind, meant to belittle, now haunts her like a ghost she cannot banish. Weeks pass, the recognition continues to pour into Ava's life, and Lydia cannot escape the image of her triumph, her talent, her grace. It follows her like a shadow she cannot shake, teaching her a lesson she never wanted, but desperately needed. One afternoon, she does something she hasn't done in years, something that scares her more than any confrontation she's ever staged. She steps into the building that now houses Ava's studio. The studio is warm, filled with sunlight, tables scattered with sketches, bolts of fabric, mannequins poised in mid-motion as if they are ready to dance. The air smells faintly of paint, of pencil, of possibility. Lydia clutches a bouquet of flowers, clearly unpracticed at such gestures, her fingers tight around the stems, petals trembling slightly. She hesitates at the threshold, watching Ava at work, focused and serene, moving like she owns the space that once might have belonged only to privilege. Finally, Lydia steps forward, her voice low, hesitant, stripped of pretense. "I was wrong," she says quietly, almost a whisper, almost afraid that speaking louder would shatter the fragile control she is clinging to. "Your talent, I didn't see it." There is no sarcasm here, no performative pity. There is only the raw, human admission of error, the unguarded acknowledgement of someone who has finally recognized what she tried so hard to deny. Ava looks up slowly, her eyes meeting Lydia's. There is a pause, heavy with history, heavy with unspoken words, and then she smiles. It is a smile that carries nothing but grace, a calm understanding that bitterness is unnecessary, that resentment is a choice she refuses to take. She steps aside, letting Lydia into the studio, letting the flowers rest on a table cluttered with sketches, bolts of emerald fabric, and the tools of her craft. Ava doesn't lecture, she doesn't sneer. She doesn't need to. Her presence, her composure, her success speaks louder than any words ever could. Because Ava has learned something that Lydia has yet to understand fully. Validation is not found in the approval of the powerful, in the laughter of the wealthy, or in the judgment of those who feel entitled to decide another's worth. Validation lives in courage, in persistence, in the refusal to let the world's cruelty define you. Ava's triumph is not only her dress on a magazine cover, it is the quiet, unshakable truth that she always had worth, even when no one else could see it. Lydia stands in the studio, surrounded by the evidence of Ava's talent, her own arrogance laid bare, and feels a shift in the air she cannot deny. It is a lesson she will carry forward, a first taste of humility that her wealth and status never taught her. And Ava, standing amidst her creations, her eyes steady, her hands moving over sketches that are already coming to life in new, bold designs, accepts the apology with grace, not bitterness. She extends no judgment, offers no gloating, no sense of superiority. She doesn't need it. Her courage has always been her armor, and it has carried her farther than laughter ever could. The bouquet of flowers rests between them, a fragile bridge spanning the gap between past cruelty and present recognition. Outside, the sun filters through the windows, warm and golden, illuminating the studio in light that feels almost miraculous. It falls on Ava's dress, on the sketches, on her poised, serene figure, and then, by reflection, on Lydia, who finally understands what it means to recognize brilliance without owning it, to acknowledge talent without diminishing it, and to feel humility for the first time. And as the day stretches into evening, Ava returns to her workbench, her pencil moving gracefully over a new design, her eyes bright with vision. Lydia watches quietly, learning, observing, carrying a lesson she won't forget. Outside, the city moves, oblivious to the quiet moral shift within these walls, but the truth lingers like a soft echo. Dignity, courage, and self-belief are stronger than wealth, louder than cruelty, and more lasting than mockery. Ava never needed Lydia's validation, only her own courage. And that courage, finally recognized by the world, shines brighter than anything money or status could ever buy. The cover hits the stands, the world celebrates, and Ava, standing tall in her own light, knows without question that she has arrived.